welcome. My name is Gospel Ede, your regular host on the program Issues of the Moment on MBS TV. Of course, you know, this is a platform where we discuss issues as far as social issues are concerned, political issues, economic issues, and the rest of them. And so today we are here to look at one very important issue. It will be recalled that on Wednesday, just Wednesday, the Nasarawa State House of Assembly celebrated its 23 years of existence as an institution of government. And that event was also had what we call the unveiling and launching of a compendium that comprises of activities that shaped the Assembly in the last 23 years from 1999 to 2022. And so that event has come and gone. And I would like to review the event and what has equally taken place in the Assembly within those period. And so we have a topic to consider today, which is exploit of Nasarawa State House of Assembly at 23. And my guest, the man who they have fixed today to do justice to the issue at stake, is no any other person than Honorable Yakubu Abdulhamid Kwara. He is a former majority leader of the Nasarawa State House of Assembly.
Thank you very much, God's power.
All right, Honorable Abdulhamid Kwara was also a one-time commissioner in the Ministry of Information and also Ministry of Environment and Natural Resources in Nasarawa State. So we are going to be engaging him, you know, being a pioneer member of the Assembly and one who has very deep knowledge about the affairs of legislature as far as the state is concerned. So he will be giving us his perspective of what the Assembly has come to be within this period. But before we go into details, I would like to know more about Honorable Abdulhamid Kwara. Some people call you double carburetor. Maybe let us know a little about you. Why such a name?
Well, as a politician, and with all modesty, with the natural or God's given endowment, and like I said, I don't like assessing myself. Wow. Because it makes me look sort of trying to be full of myself. I can accept the fact that I'm someone who is very charismatic, and someone who to some extent eloquent. I'm someone who has that capacity for delivery, and particularly in terms of expression and commanding or earning audience in public, especially during political gatherings or during political campaigns. All right. So people always like to listen to Abdulhamid Kwara speak. And that is the more reason why they gave me all kinds of names. But I think double carburetor started from MBS here with Shigaparta. When I was going to run in 2003, he packaged a jingle for me, and in that jingle he called me DAF, double carburetor. At that time I was at my peak. Kwara was all over the places. And if you just talk about Kwara, even those who don't know Kwara know Kwara. So that coincided, and it became what I would now be known, particularly in my local environment, and as well as the state, including, I'm even surprised that you even heard of that name. So anyway, I'm going to talk, you see, double carburetor. So it implies the way I speak, people like listening to me and so on and so on. But you know, sometimes, you know, age is setting in now. That was then, you know, everybody at his own time would always want to be at the best of who he is. So that's exactly how it all came about.
All right. I think that expression fits into one who is competent, who has much capacity.
Well, that is for you to do the assessment.
All right, okay. Let's get into our conversation proper. We're talking about Nasarawa State House of Assembly.
That's correct.
In the last 23 years. And as a pioneer member of the Assembly, how would you assess the exploit of the Assembly from 1999 till date?
Thank you very much. Going down memory lane, I would say in just one simple language, it was and it has been a very exciting experience for quite a combination of issues. We were the pioneers in 1999, coming from various and diverse backgrounds, with the aim of representing our representatives of various constituencies.
Exactly.
As the first legislative assembly, and to lay the foundation that will define the development agenda of Nasarawa State.
Okay.
But you can only understand that if we take a little bit of a drawback or a perspective to circumstances that led to the creation of Nasarawa State in the first place, utter negligence and marginalization. So we came on board. One of those things we knew were very strategic, because the assembly or the legislative arm of government anywhere in the world is the most strategic. So that responsibility, first and foremost, was handled on us. And like I said, we came from various backgrounds and inexperienced being the first time, because we didn't have any knowledge of legislative practice and procedure anywhere we're going to begin. Neither were those that we constitute the government at that time had any knowledge. Secondly, we're not only the first pioneer, but we're the first generation of elected democratic governance in Nasarawa State. Barely 3 years after Nasarawa State was created from Plateau State.
Exactly.
Because Nasarawa was created in 1996. By 1999, we were already sworn in office. So you could see the challenges that was bestowed on us. And I think God in his wisdom, and unlike what it is today, my objective, or most of us, our purposes then, we were looking at public office as public service, not as a source of employment, and not as a source of empowerment of whatever kind. And those of us who had an experience, someone like me, I first started voting in an election in 1979. That is when I reached the votable age of 19.
Okay.
And I think I was in Form 4 in secondary school. At that time, my father contested election into the Federal House of Representatives, representing Akwanga under the MPN. We were in the then life years in the Troy district. So I saw from the leaders of that time, politics that was played 1993 to 1983. I knew the general purpose of all politicians was directed towards service.
Okay.
And those of us that were coming, and in 1992 during the SDP NRC, it was also the same background. So to those of us who aspired to go to public office, we had this as a driving force. That was how we came to assembly. In fact, it might interest you to note that as legislators, we were paid 16,000 naira as salary for almost 18 months. A lot of people don't know this.
At the State Assembly?
At the State Assembly in 1999 to almost 2001 or thereabout.
Wow.
From there to 54,000 naira, and from there to 100 and something for the whole of the first tenure. The entire subvention of the Nasarawa State House of Assembly as at that time was 4 million. Whereas the entire subvention of Nasarawa State government as at that time was just about 340 million, thereabout. And you could imagine how we started. We were living at the Nasarawa estate, make up this scene.
Yeah.
While the governor was just living at the 2-bedroom in the presidential lodge. While the present office of what do you call the school's primary education board, that was the governor's office at that time.
Exactly.
And by the time after 18 months he completed the government house, he moved and the deputy governor took over there. So you could see. That is why I said we had a challenge as pioneers, not just as members of the State Assembly, but also as democratically elected administration, to lay the foundation that will define the developmental agenda and to set Nasarawa State on course.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. In this case now,
yes,
we would like to take a look at being pioneers. You talked about the difficulties, the challenges of starting.
That's correct.
Let us look at the aspect of lawmaking. How was it between then and now?
You see, first and foremost, every legislative session or generation defines its own legislative agenda and its own rules of the House.
Okay.
That is why you call the legislature session. Because once a session terminates, a new session comes in. During our time, we were lucky to be guided by most of those who were legislative staff from the former Plateau State House of Assembly, particularly our first clerk. He was equally the clerk of the then Plateau State House of Assembly. Okay. So he has nurtured the assembly there, so it was easier for him.
Talking about the current
thank you, Paul, Joel Aninge, that's correct. So he was able to identify some of the potentials in some of us. Okay. and he utilized it, or he exploited it to build our capacity to understand the rudiments and then the expectations as a guide. Unfortunately, he didn't last. In fact, he organized the first legislative practice procedure, what we call the workshop. Okay. And coincidentally, he invited some key persons that could deliver in some certain aspects of what will be part of our responsibilities. So that is for that people like Justice Aisha then, I think was the Director General Ministry of Justice before the Civil Service Reform and so on and so forth. That was even how she ended up becoming a clerk, because she delivered a paper on something, the powers and functions of the legislature or something like that, which is purely legal decision from the constitutional perspective. That was how we got to know some of this and how to even read the Constitution, because she put us through on how to even understand how to use the Constitution in itself. Wow. Because it was a document we have never seen, so we don't even know how to go about it. To even understand that the Constitution is not only a legal document, but equally a political document. And to also understand that the only authority that has a right to interpret the Constitution is the court of law. So any other person who is talking about the Constitution is merely expressing an opinion. So you could see the Constitution from different perspectives. She led that background. And that gave basis for debate or for argument. Wow. So having said so, like I said, every generation or every session of an assembly defines its own agenda. So we did our own by laying the foundation. So it is expected that the subsequent assembly that will come in depends on what do they want. Are they going to supersede? Or are they going to build over what we have done? Or would they want, because we've set a bar. So any other person coming will either meet our bar, but certainly cannot afford to go below. But the issue of whether they have met our bar or not is a different topic, because each assembly has its own. It's just like the human element. You have your weaknesses and you also have your strengths. Exactly. Or you have your advantages and you also have your disadvantages. Okay. Yes, depending on the perspective individual will want to assess you. That's okay.
All right. The sixth assembly, yes. The current assembly
That's
now,
correct.
Presided over by
Ibrahim Balarabe Abdullahi. That's correct.
All right. This assembly came up with what is now known as the compendium for the Nasarawa State House of Assembly since 1999 to date.
That's correct.
All right, which was launched just Wednesday last week.
That's correct.
Okay. What do you make out of that event?
To see to the personality of Right Honorable Ibrahim Balarabe Abdullahi, I have a very high respect for him. Okay. Because I did not expect that the Speaker of the Nasarawa State House of Assembly would have reached that high level of leadership and managerial skill. I want to be very honest with you. Wow. Because this is his second time, this is his second session in the Assembly and presiding. I remember vividly he came in 2000 and, is it 2000?
2015.
2015, thank you, sorry man, 2015. And I didn't expect that someone from his own background could pick up so fast and then take full control to the saddle of the Nasarawa State House of Assembly. Though I've been privileged to work with him closely because I've been rendering consultancy services to the House of Assembly. But what I'm saying, the accelerated manner to which he has been able to have a grip on the administration and the Assembly, and then putting the Assembly on a path that will chart a course to propel the development drive of Nasarawa State is highly commendable, incredible. Now, having said so, our first chairman or somebody during the occasion mentioned, and because Joel Aninge, the present His Royal Highness, was the clerk then, every week we were producing what you call Hansat. And these Hansat were gazetted by government printer, and they were being sold to the public. It gives you a weekly review of the activities of the entire assembly, what said what did we agree, what has been resolved, and so on and so forth. I think we did that throughout the period he was in charge as a clerk, and I think when Justice Aisha came in also as a clerk. But when we left, the whole idea died down. Okay. Which means the momentum with the third and fourth assembly, because that was the period of the disconnection, when this continuity was discontinued, if I use this language. Truncated. I don't want to use that, but it was because if you use the word truncated, there could be some other further reasons for them, but it was discontinued.
It's okay.
If that's okay. Let me be modest and fair to them.
It's all right.
Okay, because I wouldn't know the circumstances at that time. And again, between the third and fourth assembly, you know what we have passed through with a different leadership, and there's some of the challenges between the executive and legislature, because we had a situation where we now have a dominant party controlling the legislature with a different political party controlling the executive, particularly in 2011. So that particular situation, so that also contributed in part of the internal situation that the speaker who was presiding then acknowledged the deficiency of that moment and equally said, we do not regret what we did because it was the powers and we were asked to do it. And for bringing it to test, there's no regret to that. However, we apologize because it stagnated the development progress of the state at that time. If you recall, the chairman of the occasion, exactly, you listen to what he said himself. Even though the press mistook it, well, I do know the unusual is what becomes the news.
Exactly.
So having said so, going back to the core of this question, how this assembly did it. So to us, it was not just commendable, but highly credible for you to revisit and then to have a compendium that will give you the historical antecedent or origin, the historical origin or the background of the assembly, who came in. Even to me, when they were showing that clips, when they showed that clips, it was highly emotional because it recapped my senses when I was back. And some of us were, I came to the assembly at just the age of 39. I was age 39. And most of us, you could see our faces.
Yeah, very young,
innocent-looking people. You see, so that thing reflected. And at the same time, most of us have passed away. Only a few of us are still alive. And even those of us that are still alive, most of us are battling with challenges here and there. If you see some of us, you even believe that we were the first people that started the assembly, except those of us who have tried as much as possible to maintain our political relevance. But quite a number of my colleagues is an eyesore. So for this assembly to have taken that initiative to come up with such a compendium, I think it's not only a milestone achievement, but to me it marks a turning point by setting another standard that any other person that is coming now will build. They will have no reason not to continue from what these people have started. So like I said, it's highly commendable and indeed very credible under the leadership of the present speaker.
Okay. All right, notwithstanding maybe the little challenges or hitches or misunderstanding in some assemblies, like you have noted in your earlier submission, the State Assembly in the last 23 years has midwife, has facilitated, has guided development process in Nasarawa.
That's correct.
So what do you think is responsible?
Well, two issues are responsible.
Okay.
Universally or globally, government is all about one thing: ensuring the rule of law or law and order, social stability, integration and cohesion, and above all, development. If you don't have this first and second, or in other words, the rule of law, peace, have correlation with development. So if the objective of both the executive and the legislature is to focus on development, then you can't afford to have wranglings. And like I said from the beginning, one of those factors that necessitated the creation of Nasarawa State was underdevelopment. And if that is the purpose for our asking for our own state, or why we agitated or clamored for our own state, where is the time that the legislature and the executive will start fighting? When all of us, all hands are on deck, we want to accelerate the development process. And I just told you, see how, when we came in, Lafayette was barely a glorified local government. Glorified. No accommodation, no good restaurant to even eat food. See where the governor was living, see where we were living. In fact, there are no even communication facilities to start with. So apparently we need to change the narrative. And of course we did not come with the background of going to fight anybody. Both the executive and the legislature had a common direction that is focus Nasarawa State. And that is why a lot of people wouldn't know. Our first priority was the negligence on the educational sector.
Okay.
And the backward in the educational sector, right from Plateau. We decided to change the entire curriculum of schools. More emphasis on science, build more secondary schools, build all these things. We went into accelerated development in the educational sector in terms of infrastructure of those that were existing and building more. I think we came in Dem Plateau with less than 300 and something seconds, 200 something seconds. We accelerated to almost 1,000 something.
Wow.
That is again what informed, in 5 years' time, we are likely going to have graduates, those who will graduate from this secondary school, they'll be going to the university. But we still have a challenge with the University of Jos, or Ahmadu Bello University, because they have a standard and deliberately to deny us the same, our fair share of catchment areas. We are entitled to it, to deny us that. They kept the standard to deny us so that they would continue to dominate the admission into such universities are very relevant areas. So we felt we should set up a university. And we did. Today, Nasarawa State University is a different ballgame.
Of course.
But when we were going to establish that university, there were all kinds of opposition to it.
Yeah.
We did that. This MBS we are talking, we did it because we were just operating in a room at the Ministry of Works. You just have your transmitters and it was not going too far away. We initiated this. We brought in the NTA, we brought in the FRCN. Because these are facilities that you require to let the people know what you are doing. And then don't forget, the secretariat as at the time we came was at Akuruba, the way to Obi.
That is the state secretariat.
State secretariat. So we now had to start building.
Ministries.
Thank you very much.
At different locations.
At different locations. So all these ministries, so we set them up. And I told you, our income, in fact, for the first, for between 1999 and as at the exit of Abdullah Adamu, His Excellency, the executive, we didn't hit 1 billion as revenue in Nasarawa State. As at 2007, he was handing over power to His Excellency Aliyu Doma. Our revenue did not hit 1 billion, but internally generated revenue and the Federation allocation account. All the budgets are there for you to see. And we were able to achieve that. The revenue started improving from Aliyu Doma's time. It went to 1.52 billion off of an offer. And look at the projects that we also initiated. The Foreign War project. It was equally initiated and done. So I'm trying to put in a broader picture of both the efforts and the legislature. So fighting in between us was out of it. We were meant to focus on the issues like, that's what I say from the opening. We came with the background to set an agenda that would drive the development process of Nasarawa State.
Sure.
So we had no reason whatsoever. And to be honest and fair to the executive too, we were well respected.
Yeah.
The governor personally acknowledged the strategic role of the assembly, and he was the first person to accord the assembly the kind of desired respect we needed. Because I remember repeatedly he would tell them, this assembly by law or by the constitution is to supervise us. So if you go and look for their trouble, you carry your saddle. I'm not there.
On your own.
You are on your own. So he told them. So it makes them members of the, because when we came in, normally it's a human element. Some people were looking at us as small boys. Even council chairman then, the crop of council chairman then, because they were much older than some of us. Chris Abashi, JSK, the present SSG, who was the chairman of Lafayette local government, my own chairman, who was my headmaster. So how could he, who was my headmaster when I was a child, and I'm not a member of House of Assembly and he's chairman of local government, what will I tell him? He will continue to see me as his people in the classroom.
Exactly.
So he didn't want to accept the fact that by virtue of, we were the highest policy-making body of the state. So he wouldn't want to recognize that. He would still want to see me as a child. So that brought some conflict. That brought some conflict between us. Somebody who is the chairman would think because he comes from a local government and is the chairman, he has 2 members of state House of Assembly, so he's superior. But superiority is not about the jurisdiction you cover, it's about the powers you have.
Yeah, exactly.
So we had to let them know that. And the emerging commissioners, sorry, with due respect to them at that time, because they were also equally more senior citizens. They were trying to continue to look at us as either their children or people they had a relationship with. But they have forgotten the governor or the constitution only allows the governor to appoint. In fact, technically speaking, the governor doesn't even appoint commissioners. He nominates.
Yes.
It's the assembly that confirms, and the confirming authority is the appointing authority, because if you reject, you can't be there.
Exactly.
So they ought to have recognized and appreciated the fact that we are the authority. And they've also forgotten that there's no single function of the governor that is not attached to the House of Assembly, which means the powers of the governor are being donated by the state legislature. So I'm not being a lawyer, I'm being a seasoned politician, and having the exposure and experience, knows what a legislature is, because he once aspired to be a legislature. In fact, most of his trial to public offices, first he aspired into House of Assembly, he did it. He also in 1999 aspired to become a member of House of Representatives, but was defeated by Idakula, because they contested election the same time with my father.
89 or 99?
79. So he knows what the legislature is, and he has gone to so many constitutional conferences, Constituent Assembly, to draft the constitution that will usher in a democratic. So he knows it.
Exactly.
So, but because he was in charge and more experienced politically, he had to tell them, be very careful. If you go to that place and look for trouble, then you will have to carry your cross. Count me out of it. If I respect them, who are you not to respect them?
Exactly.
So that's the message.
Wow, quite interesting, and we're learning actually, especially from one who sees it all, and who is still in the system by way of being a guide to the younger politicians of today. All right. There were equally 2 attempted impeachment saga in the House of Assembly. The first was an attempt to impeach the Speaker
That's
of
correct.
the First Assembly.
Both the Speaker and the Deputy Speaker.
All right. And then the second was in the Fourth Assembly, where the Assembly then attempted to impeach the governor.
That's
the sitting
correct.
governor.
In fact, there were 3 attempted impeachments in the state, for the records. I will explain.
All right. Let's see. Can you speak on the scenarios and the significance of these exercises?
Yes. First and foremost, during my time, first session of the Assembly was when the first attempt was made. We didn't know that sometimes governors will go behind the scene to ensure that the person that will lead the House will be to some extent weak.
Okay.
And because they think, because they believe, which is a philosophy. No matter how fat the body is this small head that pulls it.
Exactly.
So Musa Agio of blessed memory was our speaker. And then Balarabo Ayaga, barrister, deliberately we've chosen him to be, by profession, Musa Agio was a teacher. While Balarabo Ayaga, by profession, a lawyer. So when we were considering them for this, the decision has been taken for Musa Agio to go for a speaker, because the tripod, governor is from Kefi zone, deputy governor from Akwanga zone. Apparently, the southern zone should come from here, and the dynamics of choosing a speaker took place, and Musa Agio has eventually emerged. But we have to midwife the coming on board of Balarabo Ayaga, because by nature, every human being has his own nature. He wasn't that charismatic to him. That's, I'm being honest. And we said somebody should be able to be there so that he can enhance his capacity while they are managing the affairs of the in good faith. But as soon as he took charge, we realized that he was bending more towards the executive, which is a normal thing any other person would say, whether for real or as a fiction. But of course, as a leader, if your followership are feeling the impact of your leadership, there you go. I just mentioned Ibrahim Balarabe, the Right Honorable Speaker. Today I commended him. Because his members are feeling the impact of his leadership. Because he's inspiring them towards accomplishing some set goals and objectives. But during our time, there was a disconnection between us and that. So we had to come up with this initiative to change the leadership of the House, to bring in a more vibrant person who will move at the space we wanted, somebody who would not take us too much to the executive. And actually there were arguments for and against, but to most of us then, we've also argued, because there were constitutional issues, but we also argued. Somebody like me, because I was at the center of the controversy, and I was the mastermind of that change. So when we were told that we didn't meet the two-thirds, I argued. I said, in the first place, constitutionally, if the House of Assembly must be made of 24 members constitutionally to constitute a House that can legitimately perform the functions mandated under section 3 subsection this is powers of making law, then it means we didn't even have a House of Assembly in the first place.
Because of the absence of
exactly two members. Yes. Exactly. If this is your argument, then that means we don't have a House of Assembly. Because if we are not up to 24 as the Constitution has directed, that means we cannot also legitimately function as an assembly. But if we can legitimately function as an assembly in view of our circumstances, then 2/3 of the members of the House of Assembly should equally be defined by the present members that the Constitution has recognized for us to work. So this was our line of argument. Wow. Because it was argued both ways. But we eventually said, okay, 2 things we can do. This is a constitutional technicality. But assuming we're 24, 2/3 of 24 will be 16. Then does that include the presiding officer? Or it excludes the presiding officer? Because the presiding officer only votes when it comes to a tie. Okay. So now he's presiding, and then 15 of us are there. We are now 16. Have we certified the constitutional requirement, assuming it was a House of 24, so that this legal lacuna or gap that the House of Assembly was 24, we were arguing with both the lawyers, and the lawyers were bringing in the legal perspective. Those of us who were not the lawyers were bringing in the political perspective. So we resolved. We said, okay, let's go first and do what, in our opinion, is our own thinking of the position of the law. First, get get at least 17 people. That is 16 on ground, 1 presiding over, so that nobody questions 2/3. Because if you question 2/3 of 24, we are 16 already. Okay. And then if you question minus the person presiding, without him already. So let's go in and then effect the change, so that after the change, whoever is aggrieved can now go to court. Okay. So we resolved, but it failed. It didn't fail because of this technicality. It failed because of the human conflict. The person that was supposed to be the speaker was late Abubakar Arua. The person that was supposed to be the speaker pro tempore to preside over was the minority leader. He's also late, Muhammad Umar Bala. Okay. He's a Gondara man, the same tribe with the speaker. We all resolved and agreed. And then the person that we have chosen to be, this thing was called, he's also late, he's a lawyer. From the same Kwara local government. Initially, we worked on Bala Elang. He's also late. Okay. We proposed Bala Elang in our own meeting, so everybody accepted. But at the twilight of the implementation, some changes were to be introduced. Muhammad Umar Bala late. Now, I think the Godeka community had to invite him and say, you are a Godeka, and you're going to preside over because it has started filtering out by morning. You are now going to remove your own brother so that another person will go. So don't be part of the game plan. So he backed out. He refused to come and preside over. Okay. So Abubakar Arua late was compelled to go and become pro tempore. Okay. So that has reduced our number down to the same 16. So we have lost 1 member. So we have reduced to. Then I think somewhere out of excitement, it was also leaked out that we have decided to change Bala Elang to Barrister. What is his name again? He's also left from Karu.
Okay, the one
that died. He was the first person to die in the assembly. Yes. I forgot his name. Like Darkos. Or something. Yes. I forgot his name. Okay. Because we felt, no, we are removing a lawyer. Let's bring back a lawyer. Bala Arua, because they had 3 lawyers. Led Iverson, led Darkos, and
Bala
Arua, thank you. So we said, if we are taking Bala Arua out, it is only fair that we bring in another lawyer. Because in our deliberations, a lawyer will always explain, these lawyers explain but the position of law to us. So they were more of solicitors also to us. Yes. So we said, let's bring him in. That was what brought about the change, and it leaked to Bala Elang. Okay. So Bala Elang also withdrew his vote. Wow. So we are now left with 15. That means somebody presiding over, and all others that were going to be victims didn't even come to the sitting. But the good thing about it, 1/3 of the House makes up, we constitute a quorum. So we could go about our sitting. So that was how that attempt felt. The second attempt was on Abdullah Adamu. Okay. because there was some problem, there were some administrative challenges at the Ministry for Local Government, and we got an audit report. Then we constituted a committee, joint committee, Public Accounts and Local Government, under the chairmanship of late Sam Alu, to go and investigate those issues. And the recommendation came. And part of the recommendation is that the governor should be impeached.
Okay.
So that report was read in the parlor, and that, was read in the floor of the House. And that set the House again in another phase of impeachment. It moved the entire state. It is in the course of that even Arua had an accident and died.
Okay.
Then the last impeachment to be pronounced of a governor in the floor of the House was that of distinguished Senator, His Excellency Moriton Kwara. And at that time, I was his Senior Special Assistant Public Affairs. And of course, yes, things could happen, but like I always say, because I was again at the center of that controversy. I was at the center of that controversy in the sense that at the enlarged Executive Council meeting, the resolution was passed that only Honorable Kwara should handle the impeachment exercise. For two reasons. First, as a former majority leader of the House of Assembly, I know the rules. And I could counter my colleagues. Because to be very honest with you, they were very hostile. They were very unwilling to listen to common sense. And they were not even willing to follow due process. And it was at that point that we lost our temper with them. And that was how that did not succeed.
Okay.
So, but like the person who spoke about the impeachment, he told you, there's nowhere, you see, just absence of peace spells out so many things. The consequences are so enormous, nobody needs to say it. Once you have conflict anywhere, human conflict, it leads to a lot of dislocation. Whether it is government dislocation, whether it is human dislocation, it has its own adverse effect. So meaningful development can only take place
when
there's peace.
Exactly.
And there is no price you pay for peace. That is just the truth. But the significance of it is that we were able to test our powers.
Exactly.
Because if we didn't do this, we wouldn't have known that, and the executive wouldn't have known that, yes, the assembly have this capacity to attempt to impeach them. So that added more respect to the assembly, because now the governor knows no matter how he is, at any moment the assembly so decides, they can put him in trouble.
Exactly.
And don't forget, in the word of the Constitution, anything that amounts, in the opinion of the House of Assembly, as a gross misconduct, you are gone. Because people say, what is the definition of gross misconduct? Yeah, it's spelled out under section 128 of the Constitution what gross misconduct is. But it concluded by saying, and any other thing in the opinion of the House of Assembly to be a gross misconduct is a gross misconduct.
All right. Quite interesting. Well, viewer, in case you're just joining us, the program is Issues of the Moment. And I have been interacting here with Honorable Yakubu Abdulhamid Kwara, former majority leader, Nasarawa State House of Assembly, and a public commentator, and we've been talking about the exploit of Nasarawa State House of Assembly at 23. We'll take this short break, after which we will continue with our conversation in just a moment.
Dear esteemed viewer, you can't afford to miss your weekly most cherished current affairs program, Issues of the Moment, on NBS TV. Issues of the Moment is a 1-hour live discussion and phone-in program that engages government functionaries, technocrats, captains of industries, public commentators, and intellectuals on burning state and national matters of public interest. Join us every Saturday by 10 a.m. with your host, Godspar Ade, as we review, analyze, and proffer solutions to the challenges of our society. Issues of the Moment live, engaging, analytical, and revealing.
All right, you're welcome back, and the program is the Issues of the Moment. My guest in the studio is Honorable Yakubu Abdulhamid Kwara, and we're still talking about Nasarawa State House of Assembly at 23. Now, sir, let's get back to conversation.
That's correct.
The House,
yes,
like many have given it accolades, you have also given your own for, this for its laudable initiative, especially this current 6th Assembly, the compendium and the so many laudable things they've been doing. But analysts are of the view that the House is not really performing optimally because of the lack or absence of autonomy. I don't know. What is your view on this?
I don't really think autonomy has anything to do with performance or lack of performance.
Okay.
The public may have their own opinion and assessment of what they expect or what they define as lack of performance.
Okay.
Performance of the State House of Assembly is how many bills or how many laws you pass into law, and to what extent are those things being effective. And I think one of the most critical laws of any state is the appropriation law.
Okay.
Because that is the money law which defines the activities or the blueprint of the plan of action of government for every fiscal year. Because the essence of government is to impact positively, improve on your living condition by way of providing infrastructure or social services and social service amenities. And that can only be done when the Assembly authorizes it. And once that is done and the wheel of government is moving, and this service has been rendered, what more do you define performance? Or what is the criteria for defining performance? What is even performance? Because we need to know this, then we now know what is criteria for performance. Then how do you now take in the House of Assembly from your own perspective and then score them and know whether they are performing or not? Agreed, finances are central to everything, even to government, to running government in itself. But there's nowhere in the world where finances is adequate or sufficient to do that. And I don't believe it is the quantum of money that gives you the quality of what you want, but how do you utilize what money that is at your own disposal? Autonomy of an assembly is to give each arm of government, as we say, separated, but interdependent, so that each one can take charge of itself. Because if other arms of government must go to the governor and get approval to be able to perform their work, that places the governor also to some advantage or advantages. And what is it? He can handwinch, he can handwinch you. He can tell you there's no money. You have this problem. So to weaken you to some extent, or to make sure that you still, it's just like a husband and wife. Your wife knows you're important only when you give chop money. If you're not giving chop money, there will be a problem. So the more she comes to ask for chop money or to pay the children's school fees, she recognizes the fact that you are the boss. So, but this is just the element of it we want to remove. Let the assembly be in. At the national level, everybody is on his own. The executive, they are there on their own. The judiciary, they are on their own. The National Assembly are on their own. Why don't we also replicate the same thing at the state? But the governor, to me, in fact, this is something they even challenged in court. Why are they afraid? Why are they afraid? That's the question. Because they believe if the assembly becomes more independent of its own, then they will perform that oversight function thoroughly. And of course, to be honest with you, it has also its own adverse effect.
Exactly.
If we don't take time, we'll see spate of impeachment all over the places.
Exactly.
At the point of the executive, we will also see it at the point of the legislature. Because we're all human beings.
Exactly.
There will be conflicts on how money should be disbursed and so on, even within the members. You will see this constant in-house fighting and trying to change the leadership. That is very likely going to happen. So this could be the other side of it. But I think at the moment, look, autonomy is even a technical term.
Okay.
Yes, because the Constitution has vested control of public funds on the legislature. What autonomy again do you need? And the same Constitution has vested the powers of making law on the same legislature. What autonomy? Who are you asking for autonomy? When the autonomy is with you, you will appropriate your own money. You will do the law to compel the governor. The Nasarawa State House of Assembly has passed an autonomy law, and the governor has signed it. So what again is?
But at what point did we get here to a point where people are shouting autonomy?
No, well, you see, like I said, circumstances explain that, because we do know what happens in so many other houses of. In fairness to us in Nasarawa State, or throughout my time, we really did not have problem with disbursement of funds, to be honest and fair to our chief executives, all of them. Because our recurrent expenditure, which is administrative costs and personnel costs and other maintenance costs of the assembly, it flows. And what's supposed to be capital and semi-capital projects, the governor gives approval. Let me give you an example. If it is time to purchase committee cars, the governor gives approval for committee cars for the 24 members of the House of Assembly and the clerk. Because that's why I say semi-capital. Because you are buying vehicles that may cost up to 4 million, 5 million, 10 million, 11 million. If you multiply it times 25, you're talking about 100 and something. That is a colossal amount of money. You do a memo, but it's provided in your budget. It's provided in your budget. The legislature go out of the country almost 4 times in a year. There is International Parliamentary Association, there is Commonwealth Parliamentary Association, there is a Mississippi Consortium for Democracy and this. There are so many they have to go. Traveling, you know it. Extra and so on. For this number of people, they have to go. This is not something you give the assembly the money to keep. If you give them, they may even channel it to some other uses. So when the time it is, now, and even the inflationary cost, okay, when the time it is you raise memo to his extent, they've just recently returned from Commonwealth Parliamentary Association from Canada. The governor gives you approval for it. Then if there are fiscal structures to be built in the assembly, that does not fall within our purview. But the governor goes to do it. He pays for it because it is provided in the budget. Okay. So in the real sense of it, it's just an issue of say we are on your own. Because at this point, the governor is going to shift all your money and give it to you, but he will not give you all the money. If your budget is 3 billion, for instance, of the assembly in a year, the governor can give you 3 billion in 1 year now. He will give you money proportionate to the money that comes in now. Exactly. If in the month you have 3 billion, first, before the disbursements are done, salaries and overhead recurrent expenditure will be deducted. Salaries on all these things will be deducted. Then this is the remaining money you have, then it will be shared for all others. How much money combined to this are you going to have? Because that's why I say, technically speaking, people may not understand this. Yes. Then the remaining aspect of money, because the governor can only give you what comes in. And sometimes you have fall in revenue. So it is what you have that he will give you proportionate to what you have allocated. Exactly. So it's the same argument with the judiciary. It's the same argument. It's the same argument. So for me, it has not to that extent as people who want to assume or speculate that it has encumbered the actual performance of the House of Assembly. In no way it hasn't done so. But I would want to agree there are some states that their governors, I don't know, but in fact, Nasarawa state is one of the most luckiest states, to be very honest with you. In fact, in the whole of North Central, there's no state that has this convenience. In the whole of North Central states, I'm telling you on authority. Because some of these state legislatures have to come to us. They have to come to us to find out how do we go about it and what's the relationship. And they go back to go back to their own state. Worst is Taraba and Benue. I'm being honest with you.
All right. I remember in your heydays
yes.
in the State Assembly, when you mentioned Kwara, like you did mention earlier, it's a household name. Everybody wants to see, everyone to listen to Kwara. And people usually travel from far and near, you know, to come and listen or watch Kwara, especially watch the proceedings of the House, to listen to Kwara and other viable members too who were making...
My colleagues who were making the assembly very lively, yes. Yes.
And we had, it was really a quality debate session in those days and contributions. So any suggestions would you give to our current members, or maybe what kind of suggestion will you give to the people of Nasarawa State, or advice as to the kind of people they should vote into the assembly? Okay,
let me put it this way. First, I was a flamboyant person. I said with all modesty, I was flamboyant. And secondly, my first task in the assembly was Chairman House Committee on Information and Public Services. Okay. So it exposed me to dealing with the press. Okay. You get the point? Yeah. It gave me the first exposure, because the House of Assembly felt this man talks too much. And he's a very flamboyant person. Let him go and face the press. Wow. And let him face public services. Because we're dealing with labor matters, we're dealing with establishment matters. So you will be the one to face them. So I was given that. I was given the longest portfolio in the House of Assembly. And that happened to be a turning point in my life. I realized the power of the press, and I cashed on it. Wow. So every blessed day, if you hear Abdullah, the next name you hear is Abdulhamid Kwara. Wow. I utilized the press very well. First to project the assembly, and at the same time, I knew the power of the and to project my person, coupled with my flamboyance and style. That is one. Two, like I said, I have this very good sense of planning and organization. Now, I was able to identify the sharp ones amongst us. Late Iverson, a lawyer, Darkos, Agade Auta, because they were exposed and they were very sharp. So I was able to mobilize to have a kind of a clique, or a group. And each time we had a bill to deal with, most of us that knew what reading and knowledge is, we took our time to read and to understand what this bill was coming, because the executive on the mind, they didn't know we could have that intelligence. So before we discuss anything in the assembly, at home, when we are idle, we will bring this bill with these lawyers, with some of us, including, ironically, the 4 members of the ANPP were very sharp. Iverson, Umar Bala, Mukhtar Alakai, and Sadiq, who is presently the overseer. They were equally very good. And I added a few more from the PDP. And don't forget, I came from the PDP. So I arrogated to myself the leader of the opposition in the House. To confront the leadership of the House. Because we saw the imposition of Musa Agiu as to weaken us. So I decided to take it up upon myself. Whereas I was PDP, I was at the forefront of attacking the same PDP government in the House of Assembly. So Abdullah was wondering, how can I have a House of 22, 22, with 18 PDP, and it's the same PDP again that is in the forefront. So before we go into the chambers, we will do our homework. And the moment they say the matter is for debate, I will be the first person to raise up my hand. But meanwhile, I have organized all my colleagues as what they will say. So if the other members didn't know we have done this work overnight, and when they say the matter is there for contributions, everybody will just be looking. My hand goes up. The speaker has no option but to give me to speak. And once I begin to talk, in fact, Agade will always say, if Honorable Kwara speaks, he's like a professor. If Kwara speaks, no any other person talks. In fact, there were some of my colleagues that would say, look, Kwara, the qualification for coming to State House of Assembly is secondary school certificate, it's O levels. Please speak O level English for us. There were some of my colleagues that would say that in the hall. So by the time I speak, I have a son who was a lawyer who just pick up, and a very good practicing lawyer. Darkos was also a very good practicing lawyer. He will pick. Sam Alu will pick. You see, they will just be picking. Agade he was a headmaster, also a teacher. That's why I still call him headmaster. So each one of them will just pick. So you could see the sequence of how we're contributed. One after the other, one after the other. We have dominated the house. Wow. So that was where the noise. Kwara, Abdulhamid Kwara.
Sir, we do not have this time anymore. I've been signaled to go. The kind of lawmakers that you want Nasarawa State to have moving forward, your advice to the people?
Every generation defines how it wants its own generation to succeed. You can't have two things can be similar. We have done our own part during our own time. These ones are doing their own. Those who will come tomorrow, they will do. But there's something again. Today, unfortunately, people see public office as a source of employment, as a vehicle to change your life, source of empowerment. Nobody goes to public office thinking of public service. It's one of the causes of the deficiency we have in the system, unfortunately. Thank you very much.
Finally, we are heading towards election. What is your advice to Nasarawa State people and Nigerians? First, to those of us in Nasarawa State in particular, the election of 2023 is going to be a new experiment. It's a phenomenon because it is electronic driven. We have not seen it. It has been tested in Anambra, in Ikiti, and in Osun. Yes. It follows, therefore, we are moving into the unknown, not what we are familiar with. I will appeal to potential voters to be very conscious of this. The consequence is that you could see in a polling unit, you have maybe 1,000 registered voters. But at the end of the day, you may end up having 150 only going to vote, or even less than 100 going to vote. It could be technical because their PVCs have not been on grade, because it will reject you. Once it rejects you, it's all over.
You could be willing, you could have everything, but once any of the characteristics in your person that the machine should show, it refuses to, everything, you won't vote. And like I said, voting is recorded electronically. So one of the responsibilities, or one thing we must be very conscious of, is to ensure engagement and enlightenment and mobilization, so that people carry their PVCs to go and vote your respective parties. Because what is important, first and foremost, is we're in Nasarawa State. Exactly. Our population must reflect what we have done this year, irrespective of the party you vote for. So you must be conscious of this. But for us as a political party, the APC, I don't want to say we want to win election, and with a positive mental attitude, we will win the election. I'm no doubt about it. We must not be complacent. Yes. We mustn't be complacent, and we must not take things for granted. Exactly. That is with the aspect of the election that's coming. And for us, generally, if you know you are winning, you have no reason to start fighting. So winners don't fight. It's only the person who is desperate to get into that place. He knows he doesn't have the potential to win an election. Let our politics be more of issue-based than personality-based. I think that is the best way to go about it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much to us.
Honorable Yakubu
Abdulhamid Kwara. Thank you very much.
Sincere appreciation for coming.
I appreciate too.
All right, viewer, that is how we go on this edition of the program. As you can hear or you saw, it was an engageful moment with my guest in the studio, and we hope to bring you the lives of Honorable Kwara in our subsequent editions of this program. We sincerely appreciate you for hanging on with MBS. And for us here, our 25 years of successful broadcast was because of your patronage and support. Thanks so much. My name is Gospel Ede. See you next week with another edition of the program. Bye.